Hi, Chad Heinrich, Versamatic Pump. Today we're going to rebuild the wet side of our E5 bolted metallic pump with poly center. Out front we have our genuine Versamatic parts of a wet end kit and an air end kit. The rebuild you're going to see is accurate in man, method, and machine. But for video purposes, some parts of the work performed have been condensed in time. At any point during this presentation, please pause this video until you have completed any part of the process. The pump we are using in this presentation has been built new and is considerably easier to work with than a pump that has been used in a process. Additional time may be required in the preparation and separation of parts and components during the rebuild. Identifying which kit is required for your repair has become easier on newer pumps, with the permanently affixed metal serial number tag that now indicates the wet end and air end kit information for the pump. Kit information can also be found in the service and operating manual. Versamatic genuine replacement parts, wet end and air end kits provide a bill of material of the components included in the kit. All items included in the kits are components that Versamatic recommends replacing when rebuilding a pump. The pump we are using today is an example of the ease of installation. Always consult your respective service and operating manual before performing any maintenance on your pump. Service and operating manuals include composite repair parts drawings, repair parts list, and torque specifications. Our wet end rebuild today will include the following items: diaphragms, check balls, and valve seat O-rings. These are the recommended tools used with the rebuild. While the sizes may change based on the model, the type will remain the same. Torque wrench, ratchet, small slotted screwdriver, O-ring pick, snap ring pliers, sockets and or wrenches, 7/16 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, 5/32 inch socket head Allen wrench. Let's get started. Today we're going to use a 3/8 impact gun for ease of maintenance. Let's remove the discharge manifold. Remove the discharge manifold and set aside for later rebuild. Remove the discharge check balls and discard. Remove the valve seats and the valve seat O-rings. Be sure to discard the old valve seat O-rings. Now remove the suction manifold. Set the suction manifold aside for later rebuild. Go ahead and repeat this process for the second side. Now remove one outer chamber. Set this outer chamber aside for later reassembly. Now remove the opposite outer chamber and set aside for later reassembly. Holding one diaphragm assembly, begin to ratchet off the opposite side. Once the diaphragm assembly is removed, remove the diaphragm assembly that is attached to the rod, set aside the inner plate and outer plate, and discard the used diaphragm. Now we're ready to install our wet end kit. Open the wet end kit and lay out components for rebuild purposes. Versamatic shafts have wrench flats on the rod to assist in diaphragm removal and installation when performing maintenance in the field. Today we will use a vise with soft jaws. Soft jaws are utilized to ensure that the shaft is not scarred, scratched, or damaged while the shaft is clamped in the vise. Now clamp the rod in the vise. Break free the old diaphragm assembly. Save the inner and outer plates and discard the old diaphragm.
Inspect the diaphragm rod for any scars, nicks, or scratches and replace as needed. Inspect the inner and outer diaphragm plates. Ensure the plates have no sharp edges or scarring on the radius. Plates can be cleaned up with emery paper, crocus cloth, or fine sandpaper. Make sure the radius is maintained during cleanup. Replace if necessary. Install the outer plate towards the wet side of the diaphragm. In this case, its natural bulge out. Install the radius of the inner plate towards the air side of the diaphragm. Be sure to torque the diaphragm assembly to the rod according to our torque specifications listed in the service manual. Apply grease to the main shaft to ensure we do not damage the main shaft O-ring. Insert the rod and properly seat the outer bead of the diaphragm into the accepted groove of the intermediate. Be sure that the outer bead of the diaphragm seats properly into the accepted groove in the intermediate of the pump. Torque the opposite side to the rod. Inspect the outer chamber for casting integrity. Inspect the machine surfaces and radius of the chamber for damage or material buildup. Scarring, scratching, or material buildup can be cleaned up using emery paper, crocus cloth, or fine sandpaper. Chamber orientation requires the discharge side of the chamber to be installed in the same direction as the air valve face on the center block. Now install the outer chamber bolts. When torquing the outer chamber bolts, be sure to torque in a cross pattern according to factory specs listed in the service manual. Now we're ready to install our opposite outer chamber. Inspect the outer chamber for casting integrity. Inspect the machine surfaces and radius of the chamber for damage or material buildup. Chamber orientation requires the discharge side of the chamber to be installed in the same direction as the air valve face on the center block. Install the bolt on the second chamber and torque bolts in the cross pattern to factory specs listed in the service manual. Now we're ready to install our suction side check balls, our valve seats. Inspect the valve seats for any wear or damage, replace as needed. The chamfered side of the valve seat will face towards the suction manifold, and install the valve seat O-rings. We want to inspect the manifold for scarring, damage, or material buildup. Check the casting for wear. Check the port for thread integrity. Repair or replace as needed. Orientation of the manifold is based on process requirements and may be reinstalled in either direction. Torque the suction manifold bolts in a cross pattern according to factory specs listed in the service manual. Now we're ready to install our discharge manifold. Inspect the valve seats. Put the chamfer side towards the discharge manifold. Install our valve seat O-rings. And discharge check ball. We want to inspect The manifold for scarring, damage, or material buildup. Check the casting for wear. Check the port for thread integrity. Repair or replace as needed. Orientation of the manifold is based on process requirements and may be reinstalled in either direction. Torque our discharge manifold bolts in a cross pattern according to factory specs.